Nuptse doesn't scream for attention. It just stands there, silent, jagged, and far more dangerous than most realize. While the world turns its eyes to Everest just 2 kilometers away, Nuptse watches quietly. It doesn't have the fame, it doesn't have the crowds, but it has the cliffs, the ice falls, and a record of ending expeditions before they even begin. Some mountains are climbed for glory. Nuptse is climbed for the challenge, and often, the price is steep. Ask any seasoned alpinist and they'll tell you, Nuptse is not a warm-up. It's a final exam in mountaineering. Just ask Ueli Steck, one of the greatest climbers of all time. After breaking speed records on the Eiger and conquering Annapurna, it was Nuptse that marked his final climb. You can train for years to face Nuptse, or, like some do these days, you can train your credit card. But here's the truth. Money doesn't buy respect in the mountains, especially not here. This is not a climb for social media. This is a climb that demands everything and gives back nothing but silence. Nuptse means West Peak in Tibetan, and it fits. The mountain stands like a bodyguard to Everest, forming the dramatic western wall of the western Sadyuem, a glacial valley that feels like it belongs in another world. From a distance, Nuptse looks stunning, but beauty in the Himalayas often comes with a cruel streak. The summit ridge stretches over 5 kilometers, a serrated blade of snow and rock rising to 7,861 meters. That's higher than any mountain outside of Asia, and yet, most people couldn't pick it out on a map. It's not because Nuptse lacks presence, it's because it lives in the shadow of Everest, quite literally. Tourists at base camp snap photos of the world's highest mountain, unaware that the peak, stealing the foreground, the one that looks like a snow-dusted shark fin, isn't Everest, it's Nuptse. For those who know what they're looking at, Nuptse is unforgettable. It's the wall that looms over base camp, the ridge that slices the sky at sunset. Climbers who've stood beneath it describe the feeling not as awe, but as intimidation. And unlike Everest, Nuptse offers no easy way up, no guided parade to the top, just steep rock, collapsing seracs, and terrain that asks one question, are you sure? Nuptse doesn't make promises. It doesn't care how many peaks you've bagged or how many followers you have. There's no marketing team, no glossy documentaries, no long line of tourists waiting the turn. It's the mountain you only hear about when something goes wrong. And yet, for some, that's exactly the appeal. The story of Nuptse begins in the golden era of Himalayan exploration. While Everest was claimed in 1953, Nuptse remained untouched, ignored almost, as climbers rushed toward the bigger prize. It wasn't until 1961 that a British team led by Joe Walmsley set their sights on the peak. On May 16th, Dennis Davis and Sherpa Tashi became the first to reach the summit via the North Ridge. Tashi led the final steps, making him the first human ever to stand atop Nuptse. It should have been a defining moment, but it barely made the headlines. Everest still stole the spotlight. Even Chris Bonington, one of the legends of British climbing and part of that same expedition, later admitted that Nuptse never got the credit it deserved. It was like acing the hardest test in the class, only to find out the world was busy watching a football match. But obscurity didn't make Nuptse any safer. In 1975, a joint British Army Royal Nepalese Army team set out to repeat the ascent. 4 climbers died in falls. Their names: Major G.F. Owens, Captain R.A. Somerton, Lieutenant D.A.J. Brister, and Rifleman Pasang Tamang, are barely known outside a handful of military logs. No books, no films, just silence. Since then, only a few have dared to follow. While Everest boasts thousands of summits, Nuptse counts just a few dozen. Why? Because it doesn't forgive mistakes. The ridges are narrow, the weather turns on a dime, and the face you climbed up yesterday may not be there tomorrow. Climbers don't talk about beating Nuptse, they talk about surviving it. Even among elite alpinists, there's an unspoken rule. If Nuptse's on your list, it's probably your second to last climb, because there's a real chance it'll be your last. Climbing Nuptse isn't just a physical challenge. It's a puzzle wrapped in ice, altitude, and bad decisions waiting to happen. The most common route begins the same way as Everest, a flight to Lukla, a trek to base camp, and then into the belly of the Khumbu. But that's where the similarities end. The Khumbu icefall guards the lower flanks like a moody dragon, unpredictable and constantly shifting. Climbers navigate a frozen labyrinth of ladders, crevasses, and towering seracs that could collapse without warning. It's like trying to cross a Jenga tower during an earthquake, but that's just the warm-up. From there, the climb steepens. Ropes bite into the ice. Crampons scrape against blue-hued walls. Every step above 7,000 meters feels like dragging your body through wet cement. Except the cement is vertical and trying to kill you. Unlike Everest, there's no fixed line of climbers, no Sherpa highway leading to the top. You're alone with the mountain, and the mountain isn't particularly welcoming. The south face rises more than 2,300 meters, almost vertically. A wall so intimidating it's been compared to the Eiger on steroids. Add in high winds and avalanche-prone slopes and it becomes clear. Nuptse isn't interested in hosting guests. Climbers need to know their ropes, literally. Ice axes aren't accessories, they're survival tools. There's no faking it here. No find-yourself moments with a yoga mat at base camp. This is the real thing. You either come prepared or you become a cautionary tale. Some peaks ask, are you strong enough? Nuptse asks, are you ready to be completely alone at 7,800 meters with nothing but ice, rock, and your heartbeat in your ears? Most people never even try to answer. Ueli Steck wasn't just a climber, he was a phenomenon. Nicknamed the Swiss Machine, he rewrote the rules of speed climbing. He soloed the north face of the Eiger in under 3 hours. He climbed Annapurna alone in conditions that would have sent most people straight back to base camp. But in 2017, he came to Nuptse, not to conquer it, but to train for something even bigger. An Everest Lhotse traverse without oxygen. It was supposed to be a warm-up, a routine acclimatization climb. He knew the risks. He knew the face. He knew the terrain. But on April 30th, Steck fell nearly 1,000 meters from the west side of Nuptse. No rope, no partner, just a gut-wrenching silence over the radios. The world was stunned. If someone like Ueli, fast, disciplined, obsessed with precision, could fall here, what did that say about the rest of us? In a tragic twist, it wasn't Everest or Annapurna that claimed him. It was the quieter peak in the background, the one most people overlook in the group photo. Some say the mountains don't care who you are, but Nuptse seems to remember. It's the kind of place that gives nothing for free. Not a view, not a summit, not even a second chance. Ueli once said, I don't want to die in the mountains, but I don't want to live without them. On Nuptse, that line becomes more than a quote. It becomes a question every climber has to answer for themselves. Despite its beauty, and maybe because of its brutality, very few climbers ever attempt Nuptse. While Everest gets over 600 summits in a single season, Nuptse sometimes gets 0. It's not because the view is worse. In fact, climbers say the panorama from Nuptse's ridge, looking down on the Khumbu Glacier and across to Everest, is one of the best in the Himalayas. The problem? Getting there is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube during an avalanche. Nuptse has no easy route, no trade route, no Sherpa traffic jam to follow. It's a raw technical mountain that demands experience, endurance, and a slightly questionable relationship with fear. There's no base camp deluxe package for this one. You either know what you're doing or you turn around. Even the logistics are intimidating. Most expeditions launch from Everest Base Camp. But Nuptse doesn't have its own designated site. It borrows space, resources, and silence from its louder neighbor. And yet, the price tag, roughly $44,500 with a top-tier guiding company. For that kind of money, you could buy a decent car, or a brutal uphill walk with a high chance of failure. And that's not including the physical toll. Altitude eats your lungs, cold burns your fingers, your sleeping bag smells worse than your gym socks from high school. But maybe that's part of the strange appeal. Nuptse doesn't sell summit certificates, it sells stories, the kind that are whispered at base camps, not posted on Instagram. There's a saying among climbers, you don't climb Nuptse for the summit. You climb it for the privilege of trying. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. There's a strange kind of heartbreak in seeing something this beautiful, and knowing you'll probably never stand on top of it. For most people, the closest they'll ever get to Nuptse is from Kala Patha, or the final stretch to Everest Base Camp. From there, it dominates the skyline, leaning over the Khumbu like a frozen wave frozen mid-crash. At sunrise, its jagged ridges catch fire in gold. At night, they vanish into the stars. It looks so close, so climbable, so tempting. And that's the trap. Photographers love Nuptse because it always looks dramatic, even on a bad day. But that view, that perfect postcard shot, it hides everything. The collapsing ice, the crumbling rock, the moments when climbers sit down not to rest, but because they're unsure if they can keep going. You can't see the exhaustion in the summit photo, You can't hear the arguments, the fear, or the quiet moments of doubt whispered into frozen gloves. And yet, for those who've stood beneath it, or better yet, above it, that view becomes a part of them. Not because it's beautiful, but because they earned it. You might not realize it, but you've probably seen Nuptse before, just not on a mountain. In 1992, the North Face released a down jacket named after it, the Nuptse jacket. Bold, boxy, and warm enough to turn a New York winter into a sauna. It became a streetwear icon, worn by rappers, skaters, and kids who had never even seen a mountain, let alone climbed one. Funny, isn't it? A jacket inspired by one of the most technical peaks in the world became the go-to outfit for standing in line at a food truck. But behind the fashion trend is something real. Nuptse didn't just inspire outerwear, it inspired respect. Climbers who faced it talk about the mountain the way others talk about close calls. With reverence, with a little fear, and with total honesty. And in the Khumbu, the Sherpas don't need brand names to recognize power. They know Nuptse, they walk beneath it, pray beside it. The monasteries, the prayer flags, the Mani stones, they're all reminders that these mountains are more than rock and ice. They're sacred, they're alive. And whether you're wearing designer gear or duct tape boots, Nuptse doesn't care. It tests everyone the same. Nuptse doesn't chase the spotlight, it casts it. Towering beside Everest, it remains silent while others boast. But ask the climbers who've stood beneath its walls, and you'll hear a different tone. They don't talk about victory, they talk about survival, they talk about clarity, about fear, about respect. This isn't a mountain you conquer, it's one you approach humbly, knowing full well it owes you nothing. It doesn't matter how many peaks you've climbed, how much your gear costs, or how many people follow your journey. On Nuptse, all that strips away. What's left is just you. And the question, are you ready? There's a strange beauty in that kind of honesty. In a world built on shortcuts, Nuptse is still long, steep, and merciless. And maybe that's what makes it unforgettable. Because some mountains speak, but Nuptse listens, and only a few ever hear what it has to say.